my name is Andrea Vona. Today is May 13th, 2006, and I'm here on our monthly Saturday nature walk with the Palos Verdes Peninsula Land Conservancy. We're at White Point Nature Preserve in San Pedro, about to begin our walk. Okay, the Land Conservancy's been working very hard on the restoration of the site. We've brought in an irrigation system and planted over 90,000 coastal sage scrub plants throughout the hills and seeded the lower, flatter portions with native perennial bunch grasses. We've seen a great increase in the biodiversity of the birds out here, and it's really shaping up to be a wonderful resource for the community and the region, and it's a wonderful preserve. I wanted to point out this building to our right here, which was a Cold War feature, the Assembly Building. The Land Conservancy is working to rehab this building to be a nature center, and will also have restrooms as it did historically. So that should be moving forward. The architects have brought forward the conceptual designs, and probably the next year plus, the building should be finished in terms of renovated. So that'll be a nice amenity for the site as well, to be able to have more site history, and offer classrooms for children and different programs. Adjacent to this grove of olive trees is the homestead site of Ramon Sepulveda, which is also adjacent to homestead sites for Japanese families who lived here and did dry farming and did abalone fishing across the street. And it's very neat. I've had the pleasure of meeting a woman who used to live here, who now lives in Long Beach, and she tells wonderful stories of Ramon's children the son coming down on horseback to collect the rent from their homesteading here, and stories of the dry farming on the hills and playing in the canyon as a child. So it's a really neat to understand all the history that's occurred here. Okay. And here's an example of native perennial bunch grasses. The Land Conservancy's worked really hard to restore about 20 acres of perennial bunch grasses. These are purple needle grasses, called such because they're very needle-like in their awns. And this is very important. The state of California has approximately only 2% of its native grasslands left, and they face many challenges because of being invaded by exotic annuals from the Mediterranean region. And it's a hard battle, and it's a difficult management battle for the Conservancy, but we're consistent, and I think we've made great strides. And it's brought back meadowlarks. We've had over 50 meadowlarks here this year, and it's a wonderful thing to get to see, I think, perennial grasslands. They don't die in August. They'll be alive all year long. So I'll pass out the little needle grasses, kind of you can see. Versus these are the non-native oats, and these will do their thing, their annuals, and then they'll die and be brown and dead in August. And what's neat about the perennials is that they'll be alive and sort of
squeeze out the native grasses.
Well, the perennials are very long-lived. There's accounts that some of the grasses can live to be up to 70 years. The perennials up to 70 years old, actually. But these do so well because they send up their seeds right away, early in the just after the first rains, and so these do better at recruiting from seed than the perennials do. But hopefully, wherever we have perennials established, they should remain there and be able to do well. Okay, this plant is a very notable plant. It's Artemisia californica, or California sagebrush. It's a perennial shrub that is very aromatic. I guess it was called cowboy cologne in its day. And it's the dominant plant in our coastal sage scrub. So when we do restoration projects, this is the plant we tend to plant the most of in proportion to other plants. And it's just a beautiful plant.
I'm Liz Kennedy. I'm a walk leader with the Land Conservancy, and behind us is a really great view of the various sea terraces that we find on the peninsula. Through the history of the peninsula, there have been various times at which the beach has been at various locations on the hill because it was once an island, and in fact the majority of the LA basin was seafloor and is now covered with sediment. The Palos Verdes Peninsula was really just like one of the Channel Islands at that time. And as it rose out of the ocean, at various points, there are 14 seafloor terraces that are fairly easy to see from this vantage point. Every point at which you see a flat area and then a slight slope up to the next level, all those flat areas were once beaches. And you can get a really good sense of how this evolved over time.
So there was a question about the Land Conservancy staff commitment to White Point, and we are here most weeks, Monday through Friday, with a crew of about 4 individuals working on weeding and planting and irrigation maintenance throughout the year. And so we've made significant progress. As I'd mentioned before, over 90,000 plants got planted. But in addition to our staff, volunteers were an integral part in planting those plants. We have work days on the 4th Saturday of each month at White Point from 9 to noon, or I should say the 4th Saturday of most months. Check our volunteer schedule just to be sure. But we have a significant maintenance component built in for this property. Okay. So here's a plant that we've planted, Lamus condensatus, or giant wild rye. It's a perennial grass that gets just about this tall, or perhaps a bit taller, and has beautiful flowers and seed heads on it, and it likes moist areas, and it tends to be adjacent to canyons and other riparian woodland areas. Okay. And I just wanted to point out the canyon that runs through White Point. This was planted in December 2004 by an Eagle Scout project, and it's been restored with riparian woodland plants. We have several coast live oak species that have been planted, or several coast live oak plants that have been planted, and willows, and as well as mule fat, which here's a mule fat kind of runaway that's a little bit more upland than you'll typically find them. But several of the willows are already over 10 feet tall, which is wonderful. So hopefully in the next few years, this canyon will have various trees popping up and provide another great level of habitat for the preserve. So we're enjoying the sounds of a common yellowthroat behind us, and also worth noting that's just an absolutely wonderful fact is that California gnatcatchers have found their way back to White Point Nature Preserve, and we have a healthy population of gnatcatchers here, of the resident species. So it really is a testament to the success of the restoration and how well the shrubs are filling in, and we're very proud to announce that fact. And I just wanted to point out, this is Eriogonum fasciculatum, or buckwheat, California buckwheat in flower with a non-native pea growing through it. And also back here we have sticky monkey flower, which is a beautiful plant in flower, and it's called sticky monkey flower because the underside of the leaves are very sticky. And I don't know where the monkey flower part comes from, but it's quite beautiful. Tubular, bright orange, quite a showy plant. So before us are, one on the west side and one on the east side, 2 16-inch gun encasement battery bunkers that were built as part of the coastal defense system during World War II. They could reportedly fire a Volkswagen to Catalina, and this whole hillside was constructed, and there's a tunnel connection between the east and the west bunker.
We're standing in the gun battery, Paul D. bunker to be exact, where the 16-inch gun was located during World War II. And you can see on the right and on the left there are these big hooks, and those were used to anchor down the gun. It was the largest coastal gun battery type of gun in the U.S., and it was stationed here during World War II. It was decommissioned, and then a Nike missile site was developed here, but you can see this giant bunker, and the name for the bunker was Paul D. Bunker, apparently, and it's pretty impressive.
This is a great vista to see the county beach across the street called Royal Palms, and historically, which ties into the Japanese homestead sites near the Grove of Trees, there was a restaurant operated by the Japanese Americans that resided there, and that's where a lot of fishing fleets went out, as well as abalone fishing. And there was also a natural hot springs, which has since been disrupted due to seismic activity cutting off the hot springs flow. But it was a very vibrant piece of the local economy and a wonderful resource that's still here. From this viewpoint, we can also notice the area to the right or to the west of the asphalt road will be about a 3-acre native plant demonstration garden that has been designed and will be another wonderful addition to the preserve. It will highlight native plant communities and offer plant placards where people can meander through the garden and learn the names of the native plants, and also highlight and display ways in which native landscaping can be used in the home. So we look forward to this wonderful addition. So where our cars are all parked for today are actually right on top of, from the Cold War, an anti-aircraft missile site. And it was an underground silo that was constructed during the Cold War. The rectangular, it's rusted now, but the rectangular sheet metal features were the launch doors that opened up, and the subterranean missiles were lifted on elevators above ground. Toward the tail end of the Cold War, I believe they were also nuclear tipped. The building to the right of that was where the warheads were assembled, and then they were brought over underground into the Nike facility. Nothing was ever fired from this property. So this little draw was one of the very few places where there was any existing native habitat. There was some existing artemisia and a fairly large patch of prickly pear cactus, which we expanded on throughout the entire preserve. And where I'm standing was all covered in ice plant that we worked very hard to remove with the help of several groups of volunteers, a lot of them from San Pedro High Earth Club, to remove the ice plant and to plant in the native shrubs. And the trail we're walking on was improved recently through a Trails Grant project that we've just finished, and we worked with the California Conservation Corps, improving all the trail system throughout the preserve, and then adding a half-a-mile ADA accessible trail loop, which is built of decomposed granite, and it's a nice trail surface to walk on, especially during the rainy season because you don't get as muddy. And we'll be enjoying that in a minute. So during the March and April Volunteer Day held by the Land Conservancy, we've planted several hundred plants in this area. As you can see, here's a small artemisia, and here's a small golden bush, and these shrubs will eventually fill in to mimic what's happening up on the slope above here. So if you're interested, come on down and join our volunteer days. White Point boasts over 7,000 volunteer hours to date. And here along our newly constructed trail, we have California poppies, and we very much enjoy these poppies. They're of the coastal variety, a Schultzia californica meridema, and they're special. They differ from the poppies in the Antelope Valley because instead of being just a solid bright orange, they have the orange centers, and they fade into a more orange yellow or yellow along the outside. So within Palos Verdes, we've got this special local coastal variety. And something that we're very excited about is, I think thanks to the heavy amount of rainfall that we had last year, is the natural seedling recruitment that's occurring in a few different parts of the preserve. All of these individuals have come up from seedlings. They're all Encelia californicas and the bush sunflower that are spreading throughout. So our concept here is to plant plants at a certain density, and that natural seedling recruitment will help fill in some of the gaps throughout the planted areas. And as we walk along, here's another little baby Encelia, and then there's some additional diversity up here, which is also very exciting. We have recruitment from Artemisia californica here and throughout here, as well as a small sawtooth golden bush that will come up. So this is wonderful. Several, I think there's probably about, I counted at one point, at least about 30 different seedlings that have recruited. Actually, and all through here, it's wonderful. They're all filling in. So we're very proud of that fact as well. Okay. At White Point, we've planted over 200 different trees at the preserve. Next to me is a blue elderberry, Sambucus mexicana, that was planted about 2.5 years ago. So it was about 12 inches when it started. So it's doing quite well. And then to my left, we also have a toyon, which was also planted about 2.5 years ago. And now it's maybe